Hey everybody, in my homeroom we had been reading The Black Pearl by Scott Odell. We've kind of been reading this a little bit all year long, so I thought that it would be fair to you guys for us to finish reading it. So if you guys will remember, in The Black Pearl, Ramon Salazar is our main character. He's a boy, and his father was one of the biggest pearlers, or people who sell pearls, throughout their hometown of La Paz, Mexico, and even in all of Mexico. He was one of the biggest ones. And he has a fleet of ships that goes out and hunts for pearls and fishes and things like that. And this fleet, the last thing that we had ended with in this, lots of things have happened through our story, but the last thing that happened was the fleet of ships had been lost. So let's find out what happened to the fleet of ships with Ramon's dad. Among the 32 men of the Salazar fleet, driven on the rocks of Punta Maldonado, only one survived, the Sevillano. On the fourth day after the storm, services were held for our dead. The church again was decorated with flowers and filled with people from the town and the hills, and so many who could not find a place stood outside. How strange, everyone said, that in less than a month, the two greatest happenings in all the history of La Paz had taken place. First, it was the finding of the great pearl. Then it was the coming of the great storm that wrecked the fleet and drowned so many. Nobody could put what he thought into words, but there were those who felt that the two happenings were joined together in some mysterious way. Of these, I was one. And as I knelt beside my mother while Father Gallardo spoke on that sad morning, I listened with only half my heart to what he said. My eyes were fixed upon the Madonna. She stood in her niche, all dressed in white, and on her face was a smile, the sweet smile that I had seen before. She looked out at the kneeling mourners, smiling as if nothing had ever happened to the fleet and its men on the rocks of Punta Maldonado. Father Gallardo was speaking of my father and his generous gifts to the church, especially the gift of the beautiful pearl. At that moment, a ray of light fell through a window full upon the Madonna. It shone upon the pearl she held in her hand and set it aglow. And as I gazed at the pearl, I began to wonder for the first time why such a magnificent gift had not protected my father against that storm. I wondered about this as I filed out of the church with the others, and as I stood in the plaza and talked to some of my friends, and when the Sevillano came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder. I was still wondering why the Madonna had her pearl, and her pearl had failed to stay the coming of the storm. The big pearl of heaven, the Sevillano said, did not bring us luck. Always before I had paid no heed to his scoffing, but now his words somehow echoed at what I was thinking, and yet I drew myself up and spoke to him sharply. The pearl brought you luck, I said, or else you would not be here among the living. It was not the pearl, he said. I am here because I am a good swimmer. While we stood there now saying little to each other, I saw at a distance the old man walking quietly up and down. He kept casting a glance over the departing throng and toward the church, but never at me, as if he did not know I was there. And yet, when I left the Sevillano, I heard steps and turned to see him, not 3 feet away. I tell you this once more, the old man said. The pearl belongs to the Monte Diablo. And I tell you because it is you who found the pearl. I made no reply to him and soon lost myself in the crowd. I did not go home as I had planned to do to be with my mother and sister, but went back to the church instead. I thought I would talk to Father Gallardo and tell him of the doubts that had overtaken me. He was not in his cell behind the altar, nor could I find him anywhere. As I came to the niche where the Madonna stood, I knelt and I closed my eyes, but all I could think of was the boats lying broken on the rocks of Maldonado, and my father dead, and the old man's warning. I opened my eyes and looked up at the Madonna. I looked at the pearl she held in her hand, outstretched, as if she wished me, or someone, to take it. I rose and glanced around the church. It was deserted. I called Father Gallardo's name, but got no answer. Then quickly I reached out, grasped the pearl, lifted it from the Madonna's hand, thrust it deep inside my pocket, and walked softly down the aisle. I had closed the big door when I came in, and now as I opened it and took 2 steps, I found myself face to face with the Sevillano. "I go back to get my sombrero," he said, "if someone in this town of thieves has not already stolen it." I stepped aside for him to pass. He drew back and looked at me. It was only a fleeting look, but as I walked on, I asked myself in that quick glance he had not seen the bulge the pearl had made in my pocket. I crossed the plaza, turning around several times, for I half expected the old man to be following me, and as I reached the gate, I looked for him to step out from the trees. The great pearl was found missing early that evening by an altar boy. I knew that someone had discovered the theft, for the big bell in the church had begun to toll. At the first sound of the bell, my mother, who was writing a letter, dropped her pen and looked at me. "What does that bell mean?" she asked. "It calls the town to prayer." "This is not the hour for prayer." "Then some boys are playing around in the belfry," I said. The bell went on tolling, and in a short time Father Gallardo came to the door, out of breath. The pearl is gone!" he cried. "Gone!" "Gone?" I asked. "Stolen!" I jumped to my feet and followed him back to the church. People were gathered outside. He led me down the aisle and pointed to the niche where the Madonna stood with her hand held out and now empty. A crowd had followed us, and there were many ideas about who had stolen the great pearl. Someone said that an Indian she knew had stolen it. Another said she had seen a strange man running away from the church. As I listened, and the women wept, and Father Gallardo wrung his hands, it was on my tongue to say, "I have the pearl. It is in my room, hidden under my pillow. Wait, and I will go get it." Then I thought of the wrecked ships at Maldonado, and again I heard the old man's voice as clear as if he were there in the church beside me, speaking his solemn admonition. I slipped away and went home after supper with the pearl hidden in my shirt. I went down to the beach, taking a roundabout path so as not to be seen. I searched until I found a boat that belonged to a man I knew. It was not a boat for a swift voyage, being too large for me to handle well, but there were no others. When the moon came up, I started for the lagoon where the Monte Diablo lived, or where the old man said he lived, and now I half believed to be the truth. We will continue this tomorrow.